Dude, and with me today I have Geneva Doak. How are you doing, Geneva?
I'm great. How are you?
So we're going to start talking about, in the world of STEAM, we're going to talk pretty much about the engineering, the E, and a little bit about the T, right? So we're going to talk all about robotics.
Yes.
All right. So as it relates to robotics, how did you become such a robotics genius? How did you end up teaching these young kids about FIRST Robotics, FLL as they call it, FIRST Robotics Lego League? Or
Yes.
tell me about that.
So I am a biomedical engineer, and I came up here to Minnesota to go to graduate school, and then I ran into this
PhD,
program.
right?
Yes,
PhD program. Okay.
Yes. And there's this program that you volunteer to help kids learn robotics. And I was like, robotics? I have no idea what that is, but sounds like an awesome opportunity and like a great way to teach
Sure.
kids what robotics is while I'm teaching myself. So I joined an FLL team as an assistant coach, and a couple years later, here I am now coaching a team with Minnesota STEM Partnership.
Dr. Monica Anderson Herzog from the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, who is online with the Minnesota STEM Partnership. And so we're going to cut away real quickly to hear what Dr. Anderson Herzog had to say.
I was first a member of BDPA when I finished college, probably in like 1991. My kids were really little then, but as they got older, I knew we had kind of the HSCC and the youth thing, and my children were absolutely not interested in competing. Interestingly enough, they found out about it from some other BDPA person, and of course, when they heard it from that person, then they thought it was the greatest thing ever. So they actually the three older ones actually competed in HSCC, but not through any effort of mine. So I think that was a good experience for them because, even though I think they're quite a bit like me, they really needed to have that mentorship and that guidance from other people, right? And BDPA really helped them with that.
A little bit about the team that you're working with over in South Minneapolis.
Yes. So we have a team there with a youth coalition called the App Robot Boys, and we get together every Saturday, and they kind of work. So they have these little Lego kits that they can build up. They have a computer brain that they can program. So they build all the parts for the robot to make it drive around and complete these different tasks. So they can build arms for it and then program how it moves around the table. And it's pretty amazing. Like within, we've only met maybe 8 or 9 times, and they've already have a robot that can complete some of these challenges. And they built it from nothing. So
From nothing.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. So you're headed to a competition too this year, right? So this is the first time that they'll compete in a regional competition. Is that considered regional? Can you share a little bit about the competitions?
So the competitions for Lego League, you have the regional competitions like you mentioned. We have ours coming up on December 1st. And what you do is you take your robot you've been working on all semester, and you can compete against other teams to see how many points you can get.
Okay.
And you kind of talk about how you designed your robot, because throughout the Lego League experience, you kind of learn how to go through these design processes. So how can I complete this challenge? What do I need to build to make this work? How can I program it to make it work? So they kind of go in, discuss those sorts of things, and then on the fly, they can pick up how to make theirs better. So.
Man, that sounds really exciting. Yeah. However, if I'm just at home and I hear the word Lego, quite honestly, the word Lego means playing with toys and building blocks. And back when I was growing up, you could build houses and things like that out of Legos, and there weren't any motors or robotic arms. So, on one hand, it has kind of like a childish undertone. But can you tell me a little bit about if I'm starting into it, what would a young person, what should they know about starting into that, to take a class or to get involved with a Lego club? And then secondarily, what type of jobs, I'll ask you that next, is what type of jobs can that actually lead to? So this little childish thing that people are kind of afraid to jump into, it actually ends up to be in this, world-class, high income, high salary, great job type thing. So if you can elaborate on those steps for the youngsters, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. So all the kids on our team have never done any sort of programming or robotics before. So they started this, they've met 9 times and they already have a working robot. So you really don't need to have any experience to get into it. So to find a place where you can get involved in something like Lego robotics, you can talk to your school. There's some Minnesota STEM Partnership. You can look into that to see how you can get involved.
Nice T-shirt, by the way, too.
Minnesota STEM Partnership. So you can look into a lot of resources to see where you can find a team to join if
Okay.
you're interested in like this as an opportunity.
Absolutely. So understand with the Minnesota STEM Partnership, we have the AfroBot boys that are over South Minneapolis. There's another team that I think that you're going to substitute at next week called the ProBot Kids. It stands for
Yes.
Progressive Baptist Robot Kids, but they kind of shrunk it up. And are you excited to go visit them?
Yeah, I'm really excited to meet some new kids and see how it's going and
Yeah.
hopefully help them before their competition as well.
Sure,
So
sure.
it'll be a really good experience.
And they have a third team that's over in North Minneapolis called I think they're called the Robo Rockets, and they're run by Alan Stovall.
Yes.
And they are kids from Franklin Middle School. So the way I understand it is because of the way that the public school systems are organized and the way that FIRST Robotics works is a student cannot participate or compete in different levels of robotics activities. So really, the purpose of the Minnesota STEM Partnership then is to take these kids out of these, public schools or, community or after-school club and give them the opportunity to move further along that robotics platform, if you will. Instead of just learning some basic things, they can actually maybe get a chance to advance or succeed. With your experience with the AfroBot boys and the students that you have, do you think that's a good model? Do you think that is actually something that will benefit kids?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of kids come in and like I said, none of them have any experience in this. So you sit down with one and like, hey, like let's program this. Like, oh, I can't. Like, oh, why not?
Sure.
Because I've never programmed before. It's like, okay, let's learn. And now they're all just running around like programming without me even saying anything. So it's amazing watching them grow from people who are like a little nervous to get started, but then eventually, like it's over a short amount of time, they figure it out and they just get it and run with it, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So.
I know when I approached Reverend Miller over at Progressive Baptist, he was very excited because they have a large congregation, and the trainers over there are Janelle and Michael, and I know that they were really excited. If I'm mistaken, their team is made up of they're very young. I'll just say it's not a junior league team, but it's a very young team, and they dove into this thing. It's pretty amazing. They had some experience in the background, but I think the footage that we're going to see of the robotics, the teams competing and all the kids that have been actively working with their trainers, I just hope and pray that all this work that you guys have been putting in actually will resonate with the kids. They'll lock in and say, hey, this stuff is really going to move me along that career pathway. Because at the end of the day, robotics, right, if we just singularly look at the technology and engineering aspects of robotics, everything around us is going to be automated to a certain degree. We're going to hear about drones and virtual reality and, first-person viewing and all that stuff, but within the realm of robotics, it's really something that if you don't jump into these technologies now, you're going to get left behind, right? So share with me a little bit about where you think your involvement will be as it relates to your education and then robotics. So kind of a trick question. Do you see robotics in your industry heavily or taking over, or share your thoughts on robotics in your particular industry that your degree that you're going into?
Yes, so in my industry, there is like robotics are everywhere. So I mean, you have automated surgeries. So you have a robot that goes in and your doctor can remotely control the surgery with this robot.
Remotely?
Yeah, you can do it remotely now.
Like what, playing PlayStation and then?
Yeah, so you have like an expert in a surgery somewhere.
Okay.
You don't have to just go, like you don't have to fly the patient to that place to get the surgery done.
Wow.
The doctors can do it remotely. You have other doctors on standby, obviously, to help,
Yeah.
but like.
That's incredible. So
there are
that
lots
is
of robots.
real. That's
That
not
is-
just
that is
science
real.
fiction.
Yeah.
That's real. So I could be in Alabama and be a doctor and actually do the surgery on somebody in Minnesota, theoretically
Yes.
speaking, with much infrastructure,
Yeah,
failover
lots.
systems and all that kind of good stuff, right? High-speed networks.
Yes.
All right. I didn't mean to cut you off because
No,
that was
that's
actually
fine.
pretty cool. So the other aspect of it is, do you think that the robotics industry itself will be a commonplace? So you know how things come in, they're very expensive, but then over time they become a lot cheaper. Share a little bit about that. Do you think robotics will get cheaper?
Yeah, I think the more we learn about it and the better we get at developing these technologies, the cheaper they'll get, just like with cell phones,
Yeah.
Put a
Absolutely.
whole lot of power into one tiny cell phone when back in the day you had a suitcase and it was, a
Absolutely.
lot more of that. So I think just like that, robotics will also
Sure.
evolve that direction as well. So
And we had one professor, Dr. Monica Anderson Herzog from the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, who is online with the Minnesota STEM Partnership, and she shared her thoughts on where robotics was actually going. And so we're going to cut away real quickly to hear what Dr. Anderson Herzog had to say. All right, so so I'm going to wrap up. So 3, 2, 1. Well, Geneva, it was a pleasure meeting with you today. Thank you for your time and energy. Is there anything you want to say to the audience or to a young person out there related to jumping into robotics or anything in STEAM?
Yeah, so I guess my advice would just be, you know, don't be scared to face challenges. Like, you can do it. Just, you know, learn from your mistakes and power through and keep going with it. And if you're interested in it, then you can do it. So go for it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.